Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad, and I thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Monday, folks. First, we got a lot to talk about. First, let's talk about President Biden going down to a Black South Carolina church where a race tragedy happened to talk about democracy and hate. We'll talk a little bit about what the president had to say around that. Also, January 6th was this weekend. And we want to have a conversation, at least to look at how the retelling of the story may be dangerous for this country. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, we're going to be checking in with Dr. Bridget for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness, as she got some great stories, especially for the next generation. So folks, make sure y'all stay tuned. We got a lot to talk about. Join us in the conversation as we're streaming right now on Roland Martin's YouTube page and Roland Martin's Facebook page. And we want you to join us as part of our online culture crew. So stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being with us and being a part of the conversation. Happy Monday, folks. Happy Monday. Thank you for deciding to spend some time with us this afternoon as we talk about the stories and the topics and the conversations that folks are having right now. Some of it are mainstreams and some of it's just like under the radar, but we appreciate you for tuning in and being part of the discussion. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. But first, let me tell you, we are streaming live on a number of different platforms. Make sure you check us out on our home platform of blackstarnetwork.com. That's right, folks. That's where you can find all of our past shows, archive, streaming, all of the events that we have streamed, special conversations that Big Brother Roland Martin has had from everyone from gospel artists to many other folks from around the country. And more importantly, you can be a part of the conversation as well. So make sure you check us out there on our website at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. Follow us on social media. And we certainly appreciate your financial support. If you could just give a little something kicking off the new year in the right energy and the right spirit. So your financial donations means a world of difference for us. Just check it out again at blackstarnetwork.com. Also follow us on Amazon platforms. We're on Amazon News on your Fire TV. We're also on Amazon Prime, where you can find us under the Prime Video app under Live TV, The News, or find us on Amazon.com under Prime Video, then Live TV, The News. We're also on the Freevee network. That's right, folks. You can check us out on Freevee, and we're on now under News, as well as Plex TV, now streaming live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, free live TV. You can just search for Black Star Network on Plex TV or find us under Live TV, The News, and Opinions. Now, big shout out to the online culture crew that is gathering in the spaces all across the platforms, man. Big shout out to all of the crew. If you're on the X platform, welcome to the culture. If you're on the Roland Martin's Facebook page, welcome to the culture. And if you're on Roland Martin's YouTube page, welcome to the culture, folks, man. Oh, man, there we are. Big shout out. Let's do a little roll call, shall we? Deidre Hall, I see you. Happy Monday, Deidre. Thank you for checking it. The ABX girl, I see you. Lori Parks, I see you. Big brother Willie Frazier, got you. Mingly Natasha Surge, I see you. Cindy D, I see you. Pastor Damon Blissett, the man of the Block Church, I see you. Thank you for checking in, Pastor. Hope all is well with your family. Who else we got? Monkey Confessions, I see you. The Stephanie Humphrey channel checking in. I see you. Gene Smith, I see you. Pauline Hurt, I see you. Man, oh man, the crew is gathering. All right, folks, let's jump right into these stories, because if you have not heard and have not seen the word around internet and just in general, that you know that President Biden right now is down in South Carolina, folks. That's right. The president is down in South Carolina. He, of course, we have talked about it here on this show, where they have made the Democratic primaries. They have shuffled this calendar where starts with South Carolina starting next month, in the month of February. Again, this is the same state that delivered the president to the presidency when he ran back in 2020. And under Reverend, and I said Reverend, Representative James Clyburn, he could be a Reverend, but he's down there in South Carolina, down in Charleston, South Carolina. He decided to have a special conversation or make a speech from Mother, as the church is called, Mother Emanuel, but it's the Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church. This was the site of the hate crime where the white supremacists massacred nine Black worshipers back in 2015. And the president decided to give his address talking about the stakes that are on the line for this upcoming election, talking about democracy, talking about race and hatred. And he talks about all of these things. Now, he also kicked off, now this is, of course, January the 6th was this past Saturday. So he is continuing along that line. He also kicked off the campaign year on Friday, actually, at Valley Forge in Pennsylvania, where he acknowledged Trump again being one of the great threats to democracy, criticizing the former president for his actions during the January 6th attack on the Capitol. And the president reiterated those same things, spent time highlighting the experiences of Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, those two Black election workers down in Georgia who were subjected to harassment and defamation of character by Trump associate and former lawyer Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York City. The president continued to push on the Republicans' attempt to sanitize the events of January the 6th. The president said they tried to steal an election, and now they're trying to steal history. And we're going to talk about that. We got to quickly talk about that because this is dangerous. It's a very dangerous course. And this is why, you may not be hearing it on a lot of Black platforms for us to talk about January the 6th, but I'm going to share with you folks that if we don't talk about it, and I'm talking about as Black America doesn't talk about January the 6th, it's like the old saying goes, right? If you don't learn from the lessons, you'll be forced to repeat those same lessons over and over again. And I don't know about you, but the uncertainty of what happened on January the 6th is something that's too big of a risk because we don't know how that situation could affect Black America. Even though a lot of Black folks weren't a part of that. That was a MAGA Trump supporter effort, right? We know that. But going into this election year, given the fact that there is so much uncertainty around the political polarization in this country, I don't want us to just gloss over and act like, oh, that doesn't affect me. That affects every single person in this country. Now, let me just share this with you. We're going to take our first pause because I want to get your take on this, crew. The poll numbers, as the president is stating his case for, making sure that we shore up democracy, stating his case, talking about race relations and hatred. The poll numbers show that the president's support among Black voters, especially among Black men, is slipping dramatically. According to some polls, President Biden carried 92% of Black voters in 2020, but recent polls found as many as 20% are open to voting for Trump. That's why we got to talk about January the 6th. That's why we got to talk about January the 6th. This is not a rhetoric conversation. This is not about politics of parties, party conversation. This is about what are we looking to get? If nearly 20% of Black voters are saying, you know what, we're going to walk away from the Democratic Party and possibly put our bets on a man like a Donald Trump, something is inherently wrong. So look, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's get your take on this as we talk about what the president and more of what the president had to say down in South Carolina at Mother Emanuel Church and of so much more. We're just getting started here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network. So stay with us.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation as we're streaming live now on blackstarnetwork.com. We're also on our social media platforms of Roland Martin's YouTube page, Roland Martin Facebook page, and on the X platform. So if the crew is on all of these platforms, I want y'all to post your comments, share your thoughts, and post those questions as we have this conversation about President Biden speaking down at Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina, in Charleston, South Carolina, where in 2015, a white supremacist came into the church, sat with those parishioners for about 45 minutes before savagely shooting them down in church. And so he went back to the same church and he talks about democracy. He talks about race relations. He talks about hatred and what he sees happening on the heels, on the horizon of this critical election that we're scheduled to have this November. Very, very important and critical time that we're currently in, folks. And of course, this is on the heels of the January 6th acknowledgement that happened this past Saturday. The president spoke on Friday in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, talking once again about the fragility of democracy and where we stand. So I want to get your take on this, crew, as we share, more of what the president had to say around this situation. Everything is everything. You checked in, and welcome to the chat. Everything is everything. You say showing up at a black church, which is a disaster these days, to put us to sleep. Okay. Was a disaster to put us asleep. I don't know if you had a chance to hear what the president had to say yet. Everything is everything. But I understand the sentiment. Trust me, I definitely understand the sentiment where we have had political leaders come to those spaces where our people gather and have these type of speeches. And, I think for a lot of us, even including myself, there's always that part of us that says, okay, that sounds good on in words, how does that look on paper? How does that look in legislation? How does that look in institutionalizing this sentiment you have, Mr. President, with other things? Now, that's always going to be the big challenge because and for those who understand how government works, and even those who don't understand how government works, the president can say a lot of things. It's Congress that has to make those things happen, right? And if your Congress is divided, if your Congress is against itself, a lot of movement on some of these big button topics are not going to happen. We saw that in the Obama presidency, and those 2 terms didn't get a lot of things done because of the rancor within in Congress, the discord between Republicans and Democrats. And so it's very, very hard. Again, the president can put out some great words. He can share the sentiments. He can speak to the issues, but it's Congress. It's those legislators and lawmakers that institutionalize the vision that the president puts out. Now, not getting too far into the political weeds of that situation, I want us to at least focus on the fact that we are at a very critical point in this country, and the fragility of democracy is being discussed all around the corner, all over the place, folks. There isn't a place where a corner of this country, in any major newspaper, magazine, television show, where people are talking about what's going on in America, where democracy, the idea of democracy, the government that we have all come up under, the government that we only know of, is being discussed in a very, very serious way. Now, the president, I just shared with you that the polls, based upon some recent polls, found as many as 20% of Black people are looking to leave the support of President Biden, and possibly, I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but possibly they're looking to put their support behind President Trump. Now, I want you to put these numbers in context, because President Trump has already had about a 12% support among Black voters based on other polls. Like roughly when he was running for president, he had garnered at least about 8 to 12% in those polls. So now they're talking about this 20%, and that could add a little bit more. But some people are saying a couple of things is going to be a challenge for this president. And speaking of President Biden, the shaving away of Black voters, and then the third party candidate question. So we're not going to talk about that today. I want us to focus on democracy and hate. Now, the other thing that the president said at today's speech, he took a swipe at Republican candidate, and she served as the former South Carolina governor, Nikki Haley, who is also a presidential candidate, saying, quote, "For those who don't seem to know, slavery was the cause of the Civil War," referencing when she made those comments just a few days ago when asked the question, well, what do you think caused the Civil War? And she's talked about everything else except for chattel slavery. Again, this is a very dangerous precedent. If we can't even have a conversation, I want us to think about this. Think about if you were in a relationship with someone and you cannot talk to that person about something that is on your mind, your heart, and every time you bring it up, they seem to deflect. They seem to act as if you didn't say anything. They go through all of these changes to not acknowledge the fact that you are trying to address a serious issue within a relationship. That's what we're at in this country, folks. That's where Black folks are at. That's where white America is at. The fact is that we can't even address something that has happened over 100 years ago. We can't acknowledge that now. So if you can't address the Civil War and slavery that has happened decades ago, then how can we? It's almost impossible, and it's almost silly for us to expect that you are going to address what happened 3 years ago with January the 6th. All right, let me hear what y'all got to say on this as we talk about what the president is. Tiana, you checked in. You say for Tiana, who are they asking in these polls? That's a good question. There have been a lot of polls. I think it was USA Today, Washington Post, a lot of them doing these polls. So that's a great question. Sometimes there's people within the city, sometimes there's people within rural areas of the country, but that's an excellent question. But how much of that is important based upon the reality that people are not satisfied with the current with the GOP frontrunner Donald Trump and President Biden? We know that there's some dissatisfaction. Now, how much, that's going to be where the polls come in, and that's where the measurements come in. But we do know that there is some dissatisfaction, that folks are not happy that we're going to go back to the presidential polls, and these are our two choices. All right. Let me see some. Sean Ryan, you made a few points, so I'm going to bring up one or two of those. You said, Sean, and welcome to the chat, Sean. Thank you for joining us. You said, I'm curious what made the 20% shift. I'm curious too, Sean, considering everything that's happened with former President Donald Trump. Y'all remember last week I just shared with you, the man also has been found by the House Congressional Democrats that he was given $7.8 million from 20 foreign governments while he was in office. So 2 out of those 4 years in office, he was getting a check from foreign governments to use his various businesses. That should have been dealt with at the beginning of his presidency. He was profiting while being president, and that's against the law, folks. That's against the law. Let me see something. My sister, Corinna Denise, we checked in with her on Friday. She's back in the chat. Good to see you, Corinna. You said the people get to decide who sits in elected positions of legislating power in Congress and the Senate. Focus on the legislative branch is dangerously lacking. Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. But all of the branches are in trouble. So people don't like the executive branch, Corinna, right? They don't like I keep saying former, but I'm thinking they don't like the president. So that's a problem. They don't like the judicial with the Supreme Court and all of the issues that come up with the Supreme Court, where you have those justices who are just seem to be so lockstep with Republican Party politics rather than actually interpreting the law of the Constitution. So that's a problem. And then you got the Congress. You got the legislative branch, who there's so many issues that certain things can't get passed. That's in for the benefit of the American people. We are just dissatisfied with every single branch of government. Look, I got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, I want to throw something else into the mix. Let's talk about this January 6th situation, as the president talked about it. He emphasized the importance of telling history as it is. But what happens when something that is as still fresh, it's only been 3 years, folks, something that's still fresh as January the 6th had to be retold? I'm going to share with you what happened behind the scenes based on a new report from the Washington Post. What happened behind the scenes of the fact that you had all of this stuff that was happening on January the 6th. And literally, folks, the Republicans, and more importantly, the families of the rioters, the accused folks who were on the Capitol that day, pressed GOP leadership to retell the story of what happened on January the 6th. What the hell? This is where you start to break away from your constituents as a political leader. This is where you start to say, I can't go to the American people and just lie in their face as if they don't have some sense of intelligence, some sense of judgment, and more importantly, lie to their face as if they're just absolutely insane based on what they saw. But guess what? Guess who did it? They did. And they keep telling the lie to retell the six. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We started the conversation talking about President Biden making his visit down to Charleston, South Carolina, to give a speech today to talk about the fragility of democracy, talking about race relations, talking about hatred in this country, as he spoke from the tragic site where 9 Black worshipers were gunned down by white supremacist Dylann Roof back in 2015. And so 9 years later, the president revisits the same site, giving this speech. And guess what, folks? The sad part about it is that America really hasn't changed much in that critical area, of race relations and democracy. What we saw happening during the Trump period while he was in office was an unleashing, right? Was an unleashing. And we saw these things happening, right? So now we're at this point. We're at this point where Black America, white America has some critical decisions to make moving forward. And those decisions, some of those major critical decisions are going to have to be made this year, especially when we go to the polls in November. Now, before we get to the polls, we got to even handle the fact of where we are right now. Today is Monday, January the 8th. 2 days ago, January the 6th on 2021, 3 years ago to the day, 3 years ago, we saw the storming of the Capitol by MAGA supporters, Trump voters, folks who was just upset, white men, white women, who were so upset about the results that they wanted to disrupt the certification process. They called for the killing, the hanging of Vice President Mike Pence, Trump's vice president, the killing of other lawmakers. They took to the Capitol. One protester was shot and killed. She was shot in the chest because she was busting through the window. Other police officers were seriously beaten and injured during that situation. And as a result of that, even though many of you probably said that nothing happened, there were over 1,000 arrests made as it relates to January the 6th. 700 and plus people were charged. Proud Boy members, Proud Boy leadership, Enrique Tarrio and other folks who were identified were arrested, charged with sedition. Y'all remember the shaman, the dude that wore the horn? Crazy story about him. He was arrested. He was charged. He did like 2 years. Guess what this dude is doing? He's talking about running for office. He's seriously talking about running for office. This is the political space that we're in. Now, the Washington Post put out this piece on January the 6th this weekend. And I wanted to share something with you because if we do not talk about January the 6th, and I'm saying as Black folks in this country, if we don't have some serious conversations about how this process, some people call it an experiment. You know, Corinna, you say, hell, the whole thing is in jeopardy. If we don't talk about this, then guess who's going to feel the brunt of that? Not just white America, Black America. So we have to figure out how we're going to move forward with this whole thing called democracy. So they put out a piece talking about, this is from the Washington Post, how the GOP's rewriting of January 6th paved the way for Trump's comeback. I want to share with you a couple of passages from this piece, and I think you should read it if you have a chance for the Washington Post. But essentially, it says that pressure from family members and advocates for accused rioters was amplified by online influencers and right-wing media figures, leading lawmakers to minimize, excuse, and deny the violence and rehabilitate Trump. Let me just share with you the first one. Let's put up that quote real quick, please, Lise. Thank you. When the whole January 6th happened, Trump came out of office. He left office at less than 40% approval rating. He didn't know what he was going to do. According to this report, in those early months of lying low, Trump himself was not the main driver in rewriting Republicans' collective memory of January 6th. Attempts to minimize, excuse, or deny the violence of that day began with people returning home from the mob and intensified with family members of rioters, including the mother of a woman killed at the Capitol. Their cause became championed by pro-Trump writers Julie Kelly and Darren Beatty, and amplified by prominent right-wing media figures. The grassroots and media pressure then spread from far-right lawmakers such as Representative Paul Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene to take over the Republican mainstream. Y'all see how this works? I want y'all to just take a look at how this whole situation works. So it really wasn't Trump necessarily. I'm finding that it wasn't Trump the driver, it was the people. The family of rioters, the family of folks who were involved on that attack, who felt like they didn't get enough, that this was a tragedy, a travesty, that those rioters were seen as the enemy. And guess what? They started going online. This is, and I'm saying this because this is like some form of grassroots organizing. And this is the beginning of how stories are retold. They went online, those family members went online, started pumping out all of their own narrative about what happened. Then the influencers picked it up. Then they started putting it on their blogs and podcasts and all of these things. And then the media picks that up, and Fox News and everybody else all of the conservative and right-wing folks started to push it out there. And guess what? That opened the door for President Trump to run again, to say, you know what? You got some momentum. So much so, they said that essentially when Trump was in his low period, he was kind of depressed from the whole situation. He started to see all this activity. They started to change the retelling. They said, I'm going to look this up, man, because this is powerful stuff, y'all. This is really, really powerful stuff. According to the article, the changing view of January 6th among Republicans offered Trump a lifeline, paving the way for his political comeback by October of 2021, crew, when he claimed the insurrection took place on November 3rd, Election Day, rather than on January 6th. Trump was merely repeating a meme that was already widely circulating on Facebook. The man was brought back to political life by this growing sentiment. Then he put it out there that the real insurrection took place on November 3rd, Election Day. I got to take another quick pause. When I come back, I'm going to share with you the numbers and to talk to us about the perils of why we must tell the truth about January 6th. Because guess what? Once you tell a lie, and it keeps being told, and it keeps being told in a powerful, forceful way, more people start to believe it. The truth becomes so far from reality that the lie becomes the truth in the eyes of many. Folks, stay with me. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm sharing with y'all, and crew, y'all can continue to post your comments as I see many of you are checking in from around the country. And again, I appreciate you for being a part of this conversation. But we're talking about January the 6th, the perils of retelling the story of what happened on January the 6th, because it's important. I know some of you are probably like, why is this black man talking about January the 6th? Because in America, and if you look at history, nothing of that significance, right, is an isolated incident. It's not as if it affects them and it don't affect me. What you saw on January 6th affects every single American in this country, every single person in this country. You want to ascribe to being American, that's fine, but every single person within the boundaries of this country, this affects them. And we can't act as if we don't. It doesn't. You know, we can't act as if all will go back to normal. I'm saying to us, it won't. And I'm looking at what the conversation, the talk is about this situation. And it's not a fire and brimstone conversation, but it's more of let's think through this moment so that way we can put ourselves in a better position where we don't get on, and I'm saying Black America doesn't find itself on the back end of a situation that we can't get ourselves out of. We got to have some different conversations in this country. Now, look, let me share this with you. I was referencing the Washington Post article that talked about this. And again, this article is called How the GOP's Rewriting of January 6th Paved the Way for Trump's Comeback. And in this article, it referenced some recent numbers about how people have seen what we saw on January the 6th and how they see it now. Let's go to quote 2, please, Lise. It says, the share of Republicans who said the January 6th protesters who entered the Capitol were, quote unquote, mostly violent, dipped to 18% from 26% in December of 2021. All right, bring us back to me very quickly. The insurrection happened in January of 2021. Most Republicans, the share of Republicans who said that they saw the January 6th protesters who entered the Capitol were mostly violent, was only up 26% by December. But then by that time, 26% during the course from January to December. So from the course of 2021, 26% of Republicans said that they were mostly violent. That's changed from now 18%. That means that more people don't believe that these protesters were mostly violent versus those who do. Now, this number of 18% from 26% was according to a Washington Post University of Maryland poll. More than half of independents and about 3/4 of Democrats, on the other hand, believe the protesters were, quote unquote, mostly violent, numbers that have remained largely unchanged over time, according to the poll. The percentage of Republicans who hold Trump responsible for the attack from 27% to 14%, compared with 56% of independents and 86% of Democrats. More than a third of Republicans say they believe the FBI definitely or probably organized and encouraged the attack, a conclusion contradicted by an extensive congressional investigation and more than 725 completed federal prosecutions. Folks, let's talk about this real quick. First, y'all see the numbers? So less and less people believe that what they saw on January 6th, those protesters, mostly violent, being a problem, being insurrectionists, being underminers of democracy, that number is going down and down among the Republican Party. That's the problem. So you and I saw what happened, y'all. People literally climbing the walls of the Capitol. But you mean to tell me the same party who has talked all of this stuff about law and order, the same party that talks about upholding the Constitution and respecting the institution, and all of these things, a very small few of them actually believe that these individuals were violent, even though These protesters were calling for the names of Republicans in power to harm them. What are we dealing with on the GOP side? And what is we dealing with when you have this high level of cover up, delusion, deception happening to the American people? Let's go to the other point it pointed out. More than a third of Republicans say they believe the FBI definitely, a third of Republicans, folks, definitely believe the FBI definitely or probably organized and encouraged the attack. Mike Pence went on to the Sunday morning show yesterday. He himself said that he did not believe that the FBI contributed to the January 6th riots. He said, I've heard the many repeated assurances from the FBI that they were not involved, and I take them on their word when he was on CNN. That's crazy. So the vice president, the former vice president, said he don't believe it, but the Republican Party wants us to think that that was the case. Here's one more piece. According to a Politico article that's scheduled, that's called Pence Says He Believes the FBI Didn't Contribute to January 6th. Trump has, this is what happened with President Trump. Trump has leaned on the conspiracies around January 6th as he looks to retake the White House, claiming Antifa and the FBI were leading the charge as his supporters marched from his rally to the Capitol. Those who have been in prison for joining the riots are hostages, Trump has said on the campaign trail. A description echoed Sunday by Representative Elise Stefanik on NBC's Meet the Press. Y'all remember Elise Stefanik, the same woman who was grilling Claudine Gay, the former president of Harvard University. Now the language changes from being insurrectionists, from being criminals, to now being hostages. Y'all see what I'm getting to? Crew, y'all hearing what I'm saying? That this is not Farajii Muhammad. This is stuff that's being reported, and there are receipts on all of this. Mingli Natasha Surge, you said the fact that this is even a debate is mind-blowing in itself. That's what I'm saying. We all saw what happened on January 6th. We know what was going on. And there is a concerted effort, and I'm going to say this as we got to wrap this up. There's a concerted effort to retell this part of American history. And since there's a concerted effort to retell this part of American history, you're trying to get the American people in a state of delusion to not believe what we know is happening. And that's a dangerous precedent that we are setting for this country. And yet we're supposed to believe that these folks who are looking to take back the White House, quote unquote, who are looking to get, you want us to believe that we should put our faith into liars and deceivers? Now with their hostages. They're not rioters. They're not insurrectionists. They're not guilty of treason. They're hostages. And can you imagine the conversation around this? And language is so important. Language is so important that if we're not informed, if we're not exposed to the misuse of language to create a new narrative, which is why we even have this platform, that if we're not keen to these things, then some of us can fall into the trap of believing this stuff. And that's why we're seeing this shift. Going back to your question, Sean Ryan, why do you think the shift is happening? Because people are being lied to, and there's so many lies that it's just getting us into such a crazy ass space that we don't know which way is up. We don't know what color the sky is. We don't know the grass is green no more. We can't tell what's going on. It's a whole different reality, an alternative reality that's being presented to the American people. And this is the reality that we're going to have to work through and navigate through this year of 2024. Look at the language. Look at the retelling. Look at the sentiment of the American people. Come on. I'm going to just say this very quickly. Real Brooklyn, all I saw on January 6th was a bunch of angry ass people who thinks they are entitled. Him, that is me. You checked in and said reparation is more important. No black home is talking or cares about January the 6th. That's all right. I mean, hey, we don't need to talk about it every day, but do you not think that the powers that be is concerned about this? Why do you think the president went to South Carolina today? What do you think is going to be the driver for this election season? January the 6th, matter of fact, as I close, the Atlantic magazine, they have a whole issue. This month's issue of the Atlantic magazine is titled "If Trump Wins," and they have about 15 different subjects about what would happen in America if Trump wins, as it relates to abortion, as it relates to healthcare, as it relates to the telling of history in our schools, as it relates to the judicial system, if Trump wins. This is all stemming out of the January the 6th conversation. So Black Americans act like we don't, hey man, it's not important. This is their problem, not ours. Last time I checked, my address is in America. What about yours? Last time I checked, I'm a part of a number of systems. I get paid in this country. I eat in this country. I live in this country. How about you? Last time I checked, when we talk about politics, political power, if Black leaders don't prepare us for what could possibly happen in 2024, then how are we going to say that we are being led in the right direction? We got to talk about it. Just like we have to talk about slavery, we got to talk about and I'm saying this, and I'm not saying it's the same thing, obviously, but I'm making a point that every major moment in this country affects Black America in some way, shape, or form. What are going to be the legacies of January 6th? What can we expect? What is going to be called upon the Black voter in 2024 as a result of the fragility of democracy that we saw that was tested on January the 6th? Let's just ask those questions. We can't answer them right now, but we certainly need to think about them. Folks, I got to take another quick pause. Stay with us. We're going to shift gears, talking from politics to health and wellness. We're going to be checking in with our doctor, Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams. And of course, we're going to hear from you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Muhammad, thank you so much for tuning in. First half of the show, if you missed it, we talked about President Biden's visit down to Charleston, South Carolina, as he visited the Great Mother Emanuel Church, as he talks about democracy and race relations and hatred. January the 6th, that was the same church where back in 2015, when 9 parishioners, Black parishioners, were shot and killed in a massacre, a violent racial massacre. By a white supremacist, Dylan Roof. And the president went back there 9 years later to talk about where we are in this country. Very, very important speech, but more important, the implications is very, very important. We certainly discussed a little bit about that, as well as the retelling of January the 6th, that 3-year anniversary of what happened on the Capitol on January 6, 2021, the implications of us in the retelling of that story. And Percy, I see you. You said that's a Biden and Democrat concern, worrying about Trump getting back in office, not ours. Percy Miracles. Wow. Wow. So we talked about that as well. All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk from politics to health and wellness, because we're going to need some help to get our minds right during this day and time. So let's check in now with Dr. Britton for this week's Reclaiming Your Wellness. All right, Doc. Good afternoon. How you feeling?
Great. How are you, Farajii?
I'm good. I'm good. It's good to see you once again. Always looking bright and ready to bring us some new information. So I'm very excited about that.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit of something. I saw this story about abortion, which is a hot button topic.
Yes.
A lot of people, a lot of women especially, are very concerned about what the new restrictions will be from state to state. I've been reading some stories, Doc, about how some women are traveling over state lines to get this procedure done. But now there's something new that's on the market where women are stocking up on abortion pills to avoid these restrictions. Talk to us about that. What
Absolutely.
is that about?
I think there's been just a lack of information that's been out there. And I think when we've been talking about abortion and rights and what women may be experiencing or choosing, a lot of people think traditionally of a medical procedure. However, there have been medications that have been available actually for a little while now. And over half of abortions that occur in this country are actually medication abortions. So whether you're using a combination of Pristone or Misautin to be able to, and I probably butchered the pronunciation on that, not necessarily my forte, but where you use a combination of these medications to have a medication abortion up to about 10 or 11 weeks into the pregnancy. And so this has been the trend here for a while now. But of course, with a change in legislation or just worrying about what are the options going to be, many women have been choosing to buy ahead of time, precautionary purchases. And so they've been going to online options where they're able to buy the medication with no actual current pregnancy. And they're doing so because they don't know what the future holds.
Mm. All right. So what in terms of these abortion pills, like what is it supposed to do for a woman's body?
Right. So basically the way that they work is that the first medication, the mifepristone, you end up taking it, swallowing the medication. It ends up dilating your cervix, as well as blocking the hormone progesterone, which helps you maintain a pregnancy. And so that's the first part of this. And then the misoprostol is actually, which is a medication we already use for stomach ulcers. You take that about 24, 48 hours later, and that actually causes a cramping and contraction that will lead to bleeding and expelling of the pregnancy itself.
Mm. And this type of medication with these pills, are they available where? Because is this like over-the-counter medication or?
Typically it's something that you're getting a prescription. Sometimes they're given in the doctor's office or clinic, or a prescription is given, and or even by telehealth. What's not by telehealth now, right?
Mm.
And so you're able to purchase them that way. You have to go to a pharmacy to be able to get them, but it is an option for people, particularly in that first trimester, if they're considering terminating the pregnancy.
Now, what about the role that physicians like you're a family doctor, you help folks kind of come to some understanding and some decisions on how to move forward, especially in a case like this. What are you and your colleagues? What would you recommend? What are folks saying about this whole process here?
I mean, so the medication itself, or medication altered pregnancies, meaning, years ago I had people that missed, not even to the point of missing their period, but had intercourse the night before, believe that there's a possibility of getting pregnant. There's a way of even manipulating how you take birth control pills to make sure that you don't get pregnant. So the idea of using medications for either terminating pregnancies or for assuring that you're not getting pregnant is not something entirely new. And obviously it's much less traumatic typically than if you're doing a procedure, which can be much more involved, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it depends on the physician and where they stand on this. I've always been someone that believed women had choices, and it was none of my business what other, we all have our own decisions, right? And
right.
I'm not here to judge any one woman and the decisions that she makes. My job is to make sure they have the information so that they can make informed decisions, whatever that may be. But there are definitely doctors that I work with that won't even prescribe birth control pills because, as far as their religion orientation, they believe that birth control pills should not exist. And so they wouldn't necessarily judge the patient. They would send that patient to myself or maybe another practitioner to even prescribe them because of how they personally felt. And I don't necessarily have an issue with that at the end of the day, simply because this is such a hot topic and it's so personal. I have a problem with someone who would say, I won't prescribe it and you cannot have access to it. But if they say, I'm uncomfortable, but here's someone that can help you, we have to work within our comfort level, right?
Right. Absolutely.
But as far as how I think physicians are taken aback, obviously. A lot of people worked really hard for Roe versus Wade. And it's not that these people are pro abortion, but they are pro choices, right? And
Right.
that as Americans, we have fought hard so that people have choices, and that it was not for us to judge what those choices might be, but that people had options. And we've worked hard for that in this country. And so I think that's more of the issue more than anything.
Look, we got to take a quick pause, Doc, but I want to get your take on the fact that a lot of women, US women, are looking to stock up on these abortion pills, but they're not going to an American company. They're
Yeah.
actually going to a European telemedicine company.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, what are the potential pros and cons of that? And of course, since we're talking to Black folks, how does this play out for Black women and particularly Black girls?
Yeah.
Young girls who feel like, I was in a situation and I decided to make a decision on my own. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Folks, we're just getting started with Dr. Bridge. We're going to pick her brain talking about everything from abortion pills to everything else relating to health and wellness. Join us in the conversation. Post your comments or share your questions as we're streaming live on Roland Martin's YouTube page, Roland Martin's Facebook page, and I would love to have you as part of this discussion. Stay with us. More with Dr. Bridget and with you right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Today is Monday, so we're checking in with Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness. And she talks to us about this phenomenon of how U.S. women are stocking up on abortion pills, especially given the news about restrictions from state to state around the abortion issue,
Mhm.
and more importantly, how this latest surge of pills is changing how women see, or at least having the conversation and the impact that it has on their bodies. Doc was just sharing with us just a little bit about the impact, the effects of these pills, the access. That's the next thing we have to talk about, and
Mhm.
more importantly, how it affects Black women and Black girls, because that's part of the big conversation.
Right.
So, Doc, let's talk a little bit about first access. There's this company called Aid Access, which
Mhm.
is a European online telemedicine service. This is where they're finding that a lot of US women are getting abortion pills. Aid Access received about 48,400 requests from across the United States for so-called advanced provision from September 2021 through April of 2023. Requests were highest right around the news when it leaked back in May of 22 that the Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade, but before the formal announcement in June was made, according to the researchers. Um, and so people are expecting some real threat to abortion rights or to reproduction rights, and now they're stocking up. Even so, Doc, this was I thought was very interesting. People who weren't even pregnant.
Yeah. People plan ahead, right? I mean, like the fear is, what if this happens? I mean, never did I think in my, I have teenage daughters, and God, protect them, that I never thought abortion would be an issue that, let's say, that my mother's generation had to deal with, right? So the fact that I had a conversation before my daughter went to college, I was like, we're not living in the same world anymore. So you have to think of, not that it was ever a careless option that people should have. It should never have been a careless option, but it was still a choice, right? And it's a different world now. So people are, this is the part that gets me, that, sometimes the argument is that, white Americans, that we don't want to pay for the, abortions anymore. And we're against this. And the fact of the matter is, who's buying these pills?
Right.
It is the young, white, urban women, the 30-year-old woman that's like, I need, they're aware of it. They know the option. They're the ones that are getting this pill. It's not Black America that's calling this, hotline or, telehealth to get this. It is white America that's getting this. It is very likely the same people that are anti-choice, but that's for other people, right? The majority of people that are getting and picking this up are 30-year-old white women in America. Problem is that we are often not even aware of this choice. And because, again, what do we think about when we think about abortion? We're not thinking about pills. One of the pills is a common medication for stomach ulcers. We're not thinking about pills. We're thinking about a traumatic procedure. But white America is very well aware of these pills. And the fact of the matter is, one of the pills is going to be up for the Supreme Court to decide if they actually want to ban it. And so when you're talking about getting the medication from a European company, it's because those medications are still available there, and they're also willing to ship it to the US, and they're not breaking any laws that might be an issue in America for that. So yeah, they're getting it from another country. They're stocking up on it. I bet when the day comes and abortions are not available and these medications are not available, those boxes, you want an investment?
Right.
I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm here to share the story.
Yeah.
But I think that's what people are doing. I don't think they're doing it just for themselves. How many do you need for yourself?
That's a great question. And really, real quick, I got two questions. So the first one is, do you feel like, and I don't, and look, when I just talk about this, round in my network, but do you feel like now abortion is being used as birth control? That
There is
you're
an issue.
finding that a lot of women are just saying, well, I'll just abort the baby.
I think there's a small population of people that have gotten into a space where it became easy to do it. For a lot of people, it's a struggle and it's emotional and it's difficult.
Yeah.
But let me also say, for some people, it depends on what you think of this, meaning some people really don't consider it life, and it's not a difficult decision, because if you don't see it as life, if you see it as, I just need to start my period, you don't have the same connection there, right? And so it is too complicated of a procedure just to look at it as birth control, because we do have birth control. There was a time.
No, I agree. I agree.
There was a period of time we didn't have birth control pills, right? There weren't.
Yeah.
There was a time where the only birth control was maybe condoms at best.
Right.
And so you have options. Let this be the very last option, right? But yeah, I think there's a subset of I think people think it's more people that think light of it than they're actually.
That's what I'm talking. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, Doc. Just in terms of culturally, and I mean, we understand like medically, there's a lot more that's involved in an abortion procedure and the impact that it has on your body, because you might want to abort today, but say 5 years down the line, when you are in a better position, more stable relationship, or you're with a partner who says, look, I want to have children. And then now your body is so, you know what I'm saying, it might not be able to conceive anymore.
Right. So you can have
I'm just saying,
procedures that can cause some medical damage, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And that, of course, is a horrible situation to be in. And so, so you don't take it lightly. Don't take any medical procedure lightly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When we come forward, Doc, I got a question. Big brother Willie Frazier posed this question. He's asking, is there a way for hospitals to determine an abortion happened due to the pills? Then his second question is, would it take it more examination than if a woman would normally come in for miscarriage treatment? So I want to kind of get your take on those two questions that brother Willie Frazier posted. And we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's get more into that conversation. Stay with us, folks, as we're talking about the abortion dilemma. We're talking about women's rights. We're talking about choices. We're talking with Dr. Bridget for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness, and with you. Stay with me. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network, chatting it up with Dr. Bridget Cole Williams for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness. And Doc, I want to, kind of just put it out there again, what Big Brother Willie Frazier, one of our great culture crew members, had to say. Questions for you. Mm-hmm. He said, question for the doc, is there a way for hospitals to determine if an abortion happened due to the pills? Would it take more examination than if a woman would normally come in for miscarriage treatment? What are your answers to those questions?
Okay, so the first question is, can they tell that you've used the abortion pills?
Right.
I think that depends on when someone comes in, right? Because the cervix has been dilated, it takes time for everything to kind of shrink down and get back, your uterus, the cervix, everything get back down to its previous size. So I think it depends on when you're coming in to say whether they could tell you use the pills versus having an abortion procedure. I don't know if they can tell, oh, this was a medication abortion. I don't think that someone can see that specifically, but depending on when you're coming in and being seen, they will be able, your cervix looks different after you've had children versus before. Okay. And if you're coming in when your cervix has not shrunk back down to size yet, and your uterus hasn't shrunk back down to size yet, that might be obvious.
Okay. And then the second question to Willie's 2-point question, he said, would it take more examination than if a woman would normally come in for miscarriage treatment?
Okay, so I don't understand the question. What takes more examination? I'm not.
Brother Willie, let's get some clarity on that question, and then we can talk about that. But you're saying that essentially, like a woman, your body will go through some changes. Doctors will be able to tell. And what is the recommendation maybe that's displayed on these pills, or what is the recommendation that physicians are given in terms of how many times should a woman take in an abortion pill? Because I'm hearing some very disturbing stories from some women, Doc, when they're talking about they're up to like 2 abortions. Right. Within a very small period of time. So how do you handle that?
Let me say this, that, my concern with this whole abortion, all this controversy and the legislative aspect of it is that Black women do tend to get more abortions than white women. Okay. At
And why is that, Doc? I mean, and I'm not trying to. This is not about throwing shade or being judgy or anything. But I'm seriously wondering, like, why is that?
I'll be totally. I think about this. I don't know if it's. I think there's two aspects to it. Okay. I think one is health information and having access to whether it's condoms, whether it's birth control pills. A lot of times some girls turn 13, 14, whatever, and parents put them on pills automatically,
Okay.
access to medications and birth control options. I don't know if it is looking at, abortions differently, meaning that sometimes in white households, there's not as much of it as it used to be, but it's like, oh, well, go ahead and get married. And I think some of that happens in our culture, but not like it used to. I think sometimes there's a social pressure. If you are a young woman and your parents have put so much energy into you, your education, you're the one that's going to be, saving our family and being the first college graduate and what have you. And then you end up like you now have the weight of your entire family on your shoulders, right? So there might be a pressure that sometimes we might feel that, let's say, a white household might not feel. Okay.
Wow.
I also think that when you're young and you deal with anxiety and depression, when you don't see a future, when you don't see life options, and you come sometimes from a dysfunctional setting, then engaging in early sexual activity from someone who's giving you the attention that you're not getting at home can occur. Dysfunctional relationships happen, right? And so I think that's another piece that can kind of fall into it. So I think it's from all different sides there.
Yeah.
But with Black women utilizing these pills or whether it's actual abortion procedures, I think 40% of abortions in the US are Black women. And so my concern is, how does this affect our health system? How does this affect, because what we've learned the first time around before Roe versus Wade is that lack of legalization does not stop the abortions from happening. It goes back alley. It goes to unlicensed providers. It goes to, women taking all sorts of concoctions and things that they've heard about to have the same procedure that can cause illness and death and infection. So the one thing that bothers me when people talk about this, because let me say, I've never been pro-abortion. I've always been pro-option. Okay. And what bothers me about this is that the long-term implications of this is not even being considered. When you take away a service or something that people are depending on, there should be something it's replaced. Something's got to be put in its place. There's no vacuum here. Okay. And so if I stop, your pain medication, your pain doesn't go away because I stopped the medication. So I need to have some suggestion or option for you and educate you on that if I'm taking away the medication I've been giving you all this time. So when we're taking away abortions as an option, tell me what we're putting in its place. Are we making a huge abstinence campaign? No. Right? Are we what are we doing instead? I mean, it's done, but I feel like it's done by idiots, because you just can't take away something and not put something else in its place, because people will continue to do what we've done for many, many years before this. And that is going to be dangerous.
You know what? And I'm so happy that you pointed this out. I didn't think about the implications of this on all the way down to that level you just described. So that's understandable, and which is why the abortion conversation is not just a political conversation. It's as much as cultural, because it still comes down to choices. It still comes down to um, us having an understanding about, like you said, the pressures that we put on Black girls and Black women, but particularly Black girls, because that's what I've been hearing, Doc, that a lot of these incidents of abortion happen when a young girl turns 18, 19, 20 years old. She's dealing with somebody and she's thinking about the long term. She's thinking about how her parents and her family is going to respond. She's thinking about all of it. So a lot of those decisions are made at that time in that age range, right? That based on my conversations. But then later on in life, she may say, oh, I want to get a child, but now her body may not be up to par to be able to conceive. And so it becomes this other thing. Very quickly, Brother Willie sent a clarification. He said, would it take a blood test or something to that effect to determine what caused the miscarriage? Hope that clarifies. Does that clarify for you?
So the miscarriage is the miscarriage. You won't be able to do a blood test that says, oh, you took these medications, or you had this procedure, or you had a natural miscarriage. Like, there's nothing. Obviously, you have increased levels of hormones and other indicators, HCG, what have you, when you're pregnant. So could someone within a fairly quick period of time do a blood test and say, wait, why do you have so much HCG in your system? Why do you have, elevated estrogen and progesterone level? Like, that might clue someone, but someone's looking for something, right? And the HCG levels start to drop fairly quickly. And so again, you wouldn't be able to tell what type of abortion happened or miscarriage, but if for some reason someone was getting blood work right within, a short period of time, but you would have to know to test. HCG is not something we just test for no reason. So I would have to be looking for that. So I don't know if that helps or not.
Absolutely. I hear you. And I know this is a big question. I'm kind of debating on whether I should ask this to you, but I'm going to toss it to you as it relates to this, Doc. And we got about like 30 seconds before we take our final break. But people are saying that there should be more promotion of marriage. So Jupiter 1000X Ice said, promote marriage in Black communities. You see most Spanish and Asian cultures promote marriage instead of single parent homes. We promoting downfall. Pastor Damon Blissett said something along the same lines. Black people are not looking at marriage as an option today. How much of that conversation affects this decision to have an abortion?
I mean, clearly,
is that a good option?
I can't answer. How is that a good option?
Yeah, to promote marriage. And I'm just saying to give people a sense that that if a woman is thinking about an abortion, is she thinking, or a young girl, a young woman, if she's thinking about abortion because she's not in a relationship that is stable to sustain a child or bring a child into this world, I guess some folks are saying, well, maybe we need to have some different conversations about relationships, not necessarily about the woman's body. And that way we can create a different culture around having strong relationships, which will encourage a woman to not even have to go through the abortion process.
Yes, that is true. If we had a stable foundation that was viable and healthy, and that might decrease the amount of abortions. I see that. But I would never encourage anyone to go into a unhealthy situation, because now you've not only caused damage to this child, but the damage that you're causing to that woman and sometimes to that man. I do think we've gotten to a place where commitment is so fleeting. And I think something needs to be said about that. I don't think, there's
true.
an issue in that, but I think that it's it's much bigger than saying I do. There's a much big cultural shift that's happened that makes marriage not what it used to be. And so you cannot prevent, people are having abortions in marriage. You know what I'm saying? So there's much more that would need to happen to make marriage a good option. And it is for some hope, but there's a lot of scary relationships that would cause division. Nobody wants that. People just need to make better choices, period. But that's a whole nother thing too.
That's your after chat topic right there.
Make better choices.
Make better choices in your relationships. You know what I mean? Choose better partners.
Don't be in such a rush.
I think you need to be intentional about how you choose the one that you lay down with.
I think that should be a much bigger thing.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Like that's what I'm saying. There's a cultural aspect to this.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I think people, if you get rid of abortion, then people will be more careful. I would love to think that, because we need that. We need people to be a little bit more thoughtful about this. Okay. These are questions way beyond my scope.
Yeah, way above your pay grade right now. Look, we got to take another pause. When we come forward, let's shift gears just a tad bit. And as we continue to talk about culture and Black youth, let's talk about the fact that Black youth, according to a new report, folks, is showing that online racism is linked to PTSD symptoms in Black youth. I'm going to talk to Dr. Bridget about that, and you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network, chatting it up with Dr. Bridget, as we do on Mondays, as we're talking about Reclaim Your Wellness. Let's switch gears from talking about abortions to talking about racism and how online racism, according to a new report, Dr. Bridget, is showing to have a devastating tolls, particularly on Black youth. Now, this was a study that was published this past Wednesday in the journal JAMA Psychiatry. Mm-hmm. And Black children and teenagers who experience racial discrimination online may develop symptoms related to post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Mm-hmm. And of course, there are certain PTSD symptoms that researchers have found will also potentially linked to suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
The suicide rate of Black youth, according to NBC in this report, has risen over the past 2 decades. According to a 2023 report from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health from 2007 to 2020, the suicide rate in Black children and teens ages 10 to 17 increased by 144%, the fastest increase compared to other racial and ethnic groups. Damn.
Honestly. You know, it's funny because there was a point in time where, you know, in being lied about or whatever, we would always look at suicide was not a Black problem. It wasn't something that was a part of who we were or how we manage things or an option. And again, culture has changed. And people can be incredibly cruel, more cruel online than they would be in front of your face. I think everyone who's on social media, every adult on social media has come across some obnoxious person, troll saying something. But nothing is more cruel than a teenage kid and the things that they can say. And when you're not mentally prepared for this, can have long-lasting effects. And so, the suicide rate alone is just astonishing, and that is something that we need to raise up against and actually work hard to protect our children, because this is everywhere. You know, kids have phones, they're on social media, and depending on where they are and what they're doing in there, they're going to come across some ugly people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there are some serious psychological effects of racism on social media and online. It says that as part of this report that Black adolescents may experience hypervigilance, which is a state of high alert, if they had an encounter either online or in the real world that has a debilitating impact on them. How do we protect our children from this, especially those who are 10 to 17 years old, and that's right in that target age? How do we protect them from this stuff?
You know, first of all, the delaying how quickly we give kids phones in the first place, right? Delaying their access to the social media aspect of this. And I know that that's so difficult now because it's so widespread, right? But delaying how quickly they're on these sites and the access and how much time they spend on these sites is one thing, right?
Right.
Now that they're not getting as much access to it, then really having conversations about this country, this world, how children behave, it's bullying at the end of the day. Really giving a solid foundation of Black self-esteem. And sometimes if you're in a situation where everyone you see and interact with is Black, that's uplifting. But if you are not prepared to deal with white America, and you start getting into some of these group chats or whatever it may be, and kids at school, and you send your kid out to whatever school for a better education, they need to be prepared for what can happen and how limited these kids can be in their perspective, so that they know what to do about it. Keep open communication. When you're asking how did school go today, and they say fine, that's not good enough. Ask them about racism, ask them about who their friends are, ask them if they ever said anything that was a little off. How did you respond? And make sure they know there's an open door to help manage this. And if anything is going on online, say, how do you deal with a troll? How do you deal with a bully online? We don't have those conversations. Do you continue to engage? Do you say no, thank you, and back out? Like, how do you manage that? Do you learn how to disengage with those people because that's not somebody that you want on your feed?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think those conversations are important, Doc. And Dr. Amanda Calhoun, who was referenced in this report, in this article from NBC News about this issue, said that the high rates of suicide in Black children and teens stems from offline factors fueled by anti-Black racism, including adultification, criminalization, and the success of punishment on Black children. Adultification, criminalization, success of punishment on Black children, and anti-Black racism. And when we look at online, and I'm talking about even on those online spaces where Black folks visit, right? Like either the videos that we watch, the videos of beatings and shootings and all types of stuff happening to Black youth. We're talking about adultification, how Black girls are adultified sexually, Black boys are criminalized at a very young age. And then you have this anti-Black sentiment that's coming from school districts, from political spaces, from social spaces, from music and media. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. And the thing is that if the parents of these children, of Black children, aren't, for lack of a better word, conscious enough to see all of these things happening, then that child really doesn't have, it's almost like that child doesn't even have any lifeline, a life support to get out of the waters of all of this madness that's around them, right? They don't have a context. And I was just thinking over the break, we have to be vigilant in seeking the truth, and we have to fight for our sanity and our consciousness. Like every single day as Black folks in this country, you gotta feed some good stuff into your head. It's not enough to just say, tune in, or to expect that people are going to tell you the truth, that people are going to show you a positive view of yourself. This is a responsibility that has to be placed on ourselves. And more importantly, we can't expect schools to do it either now. So we're going to have to cultivate that within our own children.
The fact of the matter is that, with the way things have changed, and that they have this outside option, right? Like we used to send our kids to school, we put them in sports and programs, we kind of knew who their friends were for the most part, and we had this bubble, and we would try to do our best to control and make sure that that bubble was a safe bubble.
Right.
But when you then go out and now you have all of this outside factor, which is now social media, that's outside of our viewpoint, right? We need to make sure that your teenager isn't, a lot of times you're saying, oh, your teenager's just moody. He's a teenager, she's a teen. Are they moody or are they depressed? And I think it's really easy, or they snap. Oh, my teenager is, blah, blah. Are they snapping because, they have got an attitude, or are they anxious?
Right.
That's the work that we really need to do at this point, because it's not evident to us. And we might have constructed a wonderful, safe bubble from everything that we can see. But then there's what we can't see.
Absolutely.
And that's changed a lot, since social media. There's a lot that we don't see.
Absolutely.
So if we can't see it, then we have to make sure that there's a safe place for them to talk about it.
And that requires us to pay attention to them, to watch their behavior, to talk to them. You know what I'm saying? To be intentional in our parenting and grandparenting and our aunting and uncling and all of that stuff. You know what I mean? I'm just but I'm just saying we have to be intentional about that. Tiana, you checked in and said depression can show up as aggression. Absolutely.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Good point, Tiana. Glennette Brooks, you said, real talk, I have PTSD from what is going on in America now. So I can only imagine how things are affecting my grandchildren. So I check in with them weekly.
Good.
Just to talk.
Yeah. I mean, my statement with my patients, if you're Black in America, you have PTSD.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
I don't even need documentation for that. You know, we might not all have it to the same level, and clearly we all don't have the same experiences, but it is hard to be Black in America. And between what you're seeing on the news, your interactions in this world, the places you go, the what you're subjected to, it is hard not to be in this country and not have some level of PTSD. And I don't
Absolutely.
think we take that seriously enough, which is why I think it's always, you know, since I started with you, it's always been a point to talk about mental health, because it's something that we've put rolled and swept underneath the rug all this time, right? We don't have time for it, and we're stronger than that. But the fact of the matter is the world has changed, and we need to have these conversations, particularly if we want to have healthy relationships. If you want to be healthy internally, you've got to be able to get this out and take serious. You know, it's not weakness to talk about these things. It's not weakness to be bothered by them. We're very quick to blow stuff off and say, "Oh, that's nothing," blah blah blah. You know, it's not that easy. It affects us in the long run, and so we need to talk about it.
I know we got to wrap, but I know that I just want to throw it out there that another reason that we're seeing these 10-year-olds or 17-year-olds having suicidal thoughts, and even some going as far as to commit suicide, is also because of cyberbullying, which is a huge problem. And we just have to be, I think we have to just be mindful of these issues, especially for those of us who have Black children, grandchildren, or, you know, nieces and nephews. We put them in white spaces, whether it's their schools. We want to put them in private schools or the best of schools, and they have, you know, they're in white spaces, or if they're part of different, you know, curriculum or activities after school, and they might be in white spaces, just to recognize that this is going to play on your child's mind.
Yeah.
And how they see themselves.
And I know that you're wrapping up, but I was that child that went to the private schools and, you know, what have you. And I had all of this opportunity. But I will tell you, I was always a little jealous of my cousins because they were in a Black environment. They were what my family considered to be, you know, potentially unsafe, the schools, whatever. I saw it as a safe environment because I was dealing with a whole nother set of issues. And I realized really young that they were not dealing with those issues, that they were in a place that was supportive. That I did not have. And so we really have to think about what that means and how to support our kids in the process.
Absolutely. The ongoing conversation, but I'm happy that you are right there with us, Doc. And I appreciate you so much for giving us your insight about that, as well as the big conversation around abortion. How can people follow you? Tell us if there's an after chat for the day. Break it down for us, Doc.
Absolutely. So definitely you can always follow me on Instagram or Facebook, Dr. Bridget MD. And at 6:00 today, we're doing Healthy Relationships Only. We have a guest host, Will Bessette. We're talking about male toxicity and vulnerability. So come to Instagram Live at 6 p.m. Eastern and join us.
There it is right there. Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams. You can find her here on The Culture every Monday. She hasn't missed a Monday yet, y'all. If she misses a Monday, she'll come on another day in the week. But so I'm so super grateful for her. But she's always bringing us some insight and, more importantly, sharing some great information on how we can get ourselves healthy and make sure that we stay well. Dr. Bridget, thank you so much for being so good for the culture.
Absolutely. Thank you, Farajii.
You're welcome. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank each and every one of you for tuning in. My online culture crew checking in from the X platform, Facebook platform, as well as our YouTube crew. So thank you. Make sure you do your due diligence. If you enjoyed the show today, make sure you go to our website and check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. Follow us on social media at Black Star Network. And we ask for your financial donation to continue to support us in this space that we're in as we power through creating content and having conversations that's just for you. So you can go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. That's going to do it for me. Kicking off the week very, very strong. So make sure y'all do your due diligence. Make sure you stick around for Roland Martin Unfiltered at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Remember this, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture. Right here, only here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Peace.